Ever feel like you're just swimming in diet advice? Constant rules, fads. It just gets confusing,
Yeah,
right?
totally. It's overwhelming.
And you just wish someone would cut through the noise, tell you straight up how something actually works, like, say, when you eat affecting your health.
Exactly.
Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the deep dive. We do the sifting through all the research, the papers, everything,
Yeah, we dig in deep.
to pull out what really matters, the core stuff, without making your head spin.
Think of it like your shortcut to really getting it. We go beyond the headlines, look at the actual science.
And today, we are diving deep into intermittent fasting, IF. Now, usually the focus is all on what food, right? But IF flips that. It's about when. So if you're listening and thinking, I need to understand this, like, properly but fast without wading through jargon, well, this dive is for you.
We've gone through a stack of scientific articles, research reviews
Yep.
to find the key takeaways, and honestly, some pretty surprising bits too.
Our mission today is specific. We want to understand how intermittent fasting hits that deep belly fat, visceral fat,
Right.
its effect on NASH, that's non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, a liver condition,
The serious one.
and just the overall picture for heart and metabolic health, cardiometabolic health. We're connecting the dots.
And look, we know everyone's coming at this with different backgrounds, some technical, some not.
Don't worry about that.
No, we'll keep it clear, build it up logically. Hopefully it'll be, genuinely interesting.
And that's why having an expert perspective is so key to get those nuances. Okay, let's jump in. What exactly is intermittent fasting at its heart?
Okay, so fundamentally, intermittent fasting isn't about what you eat, but when. It's a pattern. You cycle between periods where you eat and periods where you voluntarily fast regularly.
Okay, cycling between eating and fasting, it's definitely gained popularity, hasn't it?
Oh, massively. Mostly for weight management, but also there's growing interest in its potential for, preventing or maybe even reversing some chronic diseases.
It feels quite different, though, from the standard, 3 meals a day plus snacks kind of thing.
It really does. And that brings up a fascinating point from Dr. Mark Mattson. He's a neuroscientist at Johns Hopkins. Studied this stuff for like 25 years.
Wow, okay.
He argues our physiology, our bodies, actually evolved to function really well without constant food, which is, the complete opposite of how many of us eat today.
So constantly grazing might actually be working against our biology.
That's his argument,
Yeah.
that our bodies are kind of designed for these cycles, and maybe we're missing out on some key metabolic processes by eating all the time. It's not just about fat burning when we fast, but that it's a natural, evolved state.
That really makes you think. Okay, so if someone's thinking about trying IF, what are the main ways people actually do it? Are there specific methods?
Yeah, there are 3 main protocols that you see studied most often. The first one is probably the most popular, time-restricted eating, TRE.
TRE.
This is where you basically just limit your eating to a specific window each day, like maybe 6 or 8 hours. A common one is 16.8.
16.8. So you fast for 16 hours and eat within an 8-hour window.
Exactly. Maybe you eat between, say, noon and 8 p.m., and then for the other 16 hours, you fast. You might also see 18.6 or even 20.4, a tighter window.
And outside that window, it's strictly no calories. Water's okay, I assume.
Yeah, water, black coffee, plain tea, generally okay, but no calories. That's the key.
Got it. That one sounds relatively straightforward to schedule. What's the second approach?
The second one is the 5.2 approach. Sometimes people call it whole day fasting, though that's a bit misleading.
Okay, 5.2. How does that work?
So you eat normally, like without any specific restrictions, for 5 days of the week. Then on 2 non-consecutive days, so not back-to-back,
Right.
you cut your calorie intake way down, usually around 500 or 600 calories for the whole day.
Whoa, okay. That's a big drop for those 2 days. Not a complete fast, but very low calorie.
Exactly. Significant restriction on those 2 days.
And the third main type?
That's alternate day fasting, or ADF.
ADF sounds intense.
It can be. Like the name says, you alternate. One day you eat without restriction. The next day you restrict calories pretty severely, maybe down like 25% of your usual needs. Or sometimes people do a complete fast on those alternating days.
Okay, so definitely different levels of intensity there. TRE, 5.2, ADF, it's clearly not just one thing.
Not at all.
Now, what about those really long fasts you sometimes hear about, like 24, 48, even 72 hours? Is going longer always better?
That's a common misconception. The research doesn't really support that longer is necessarily better. In fact, really extended fasts beyond sort of the standard protocols might actually trigger the body to conserve energy, maybe even hold on to fat more tightly as a kind of protective mechanism.
Oh, interesting. So it could potentially backfire.
Potentially, yeah. Our bodies are incredibly adaptive. So pushing it too far might not yield better results and could have downsides. Shorter, more consistent fasting periods seem to be where most of the research focus is.
Good to know. It also sounds like starting any of these might take some getting used to. Is there an adaptation period?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Most people find it takes roughly 2 to 4 weeks for their body and mind to really adjust to a new IF schedule.
2 to 4 weeks. What kinds of things might someone expect during that time?
Well, you might feel hungry, obviously, maybe some cravings. That tends to get better over time.
Nice.
Some people get headaches, maybe feel a bit lightheaded initially, could be low blood sugar, maybe caffeine withdrawal if you cut back, or just dehydration. So drinking enough water is really key.
Right, hydration. Makes sense.
Maybe some fatigue or lower energy at first, though often people report more energy once they adapt. And, maybe some irritability or moodiness. It's a change.
Yeah, hangry is a real thing.
It is. And maybe some digestive adjustments too, like indigestion or bloating. Focusing on nutrient-dense foods during your eating window can help with a lot of this.
So patience is key for those first few weeks. You mentioned nutrient density. Any other common pitfalls during adaptation?
Besides hydration and food quality, maybe starting too aggressively, like jumping straight into a 20.4 window might be tough. Starting with a wider window, like 12 hours of eating, and gradually shortening it can make the transition smoother.
Good tip. Okay, so IF is positioned as an alternative to just, standard calorie counting, continuous calorie restriction, or CCR. Why choose IF over just eating less all the time?
That's kind of the million-dollar question, isn't it? Both can definitely lead to weight loss, improve metabolic health. But IF offers a different structure, and crucially, it might trigger some unique physiological effects that go beyond just the calorie deficit.
Okay, unique effects beyond calories.
Potentially, yeah. But, and this is important, the science is still very much ongoing. We absolutely need more long-term studies, bigger studies, looking at diverse groups of people to really nail down all the benefits and risks for everyone.
Right. The research is still evolving. And just so everyone knows, we do have a quick summary of these different IF types available as a reference. Okay, so we know what IF is, the main types. Let's get into the how. How does fasting actually work inside the body? What changes?
Okay, this is where it gets really cool, physiologically speaking. The central concept is something called metabolic switching.
Metabolic switching, okay.
So after you haven't eaten for, say, several hours, maybe 10, 12 hours or more, your body starts to run low on its easily accessible sugar stores. That's mainly glycogen stored in your liver.
Runs out of the quick energy.
Exactly. And when those liver glycogen stores get depleted, it triggers a switch. Your body shifts from primarily burning glucose sugar for energy to burning stored body fat instead.
Okay, so it literally switches fuel sources.
Precisely. Think of it like a hybrid car switching from gas to electric. Our bodies are meant to be metabolically flexible like that, able to use either fuel source efficiently.
But modern diets maybe keep us stuck in sugar-burning mode.
Often, yeah. If there's always glucose available from frequent meals and snacks, the body doesn't get much practice tapping into fat reserves. It forces that switch.
And when it switches to burning fat, what happens then?
As your liver breaks down fatty acids from your fat stores, it produces molecules called ketone bodies. You might have heard of ketones.
Yeah, like with keto diets.
Exactly. Beta-hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, these become an alternative fuel source, especially for the brain, which actually uses them quite efficiently, and other tissues during fasting.
Wow, the brain can run on fat byproducts. That's amazing.
It really is. And this whole process, the regular switching between glucose and ketones, enhances that metabolic flexibility we talked about. It trains your body to be better at accessing and using its own fat stores. And that seems to benefit metabolic health in ways that aren't just about cutting calories.
So it's like metabolic cross-training for your body.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It's not just about restriction, it's about improving the machinery.
Okay, fuel switching, metabolic flexibility. What else is going on at a cellular level during fasting?
There are some really important cellular housekeeping processes that get ramped up. One of the big ones is autophagy.
Autophagy, heard of that. Cellular cleanup.
Pretty much. Think of it as your cell's internal recycling program. When nutrients are scarce, cells start identifying old, damaged, or malfunctioning components, proteins, organelles, and they break them down and recycle the parts.
So getting rid of cellular junk?
Essentially, yeah.
Right.
Promotes cellular renewal, helps clear out potentially harmful stuff. It's thought to be really important for long-term health and maybe even aging.
Wow, okay. Autophagy. What else?
We also tend to see reductions in oxidative stress that's damage from unstable molecules and inflammation throughout the body. Both of those are linked to tons of chronic diseases.
Lower stress and inflammation. Good.
And even the mitochondria, the little power plants in our cells, seem to function more efficiently. They get better at producing energy.
So fasting triggers this whole cascade of beneficial cellular processes. Autophagy, less stress, better energy production.
That seems to be the picture emerging from the research, yes.
Now, what about hormones? They run everything, right?
Yeah.
How does IF affect key hormones like insulin?
Hormones are hugely impacted, and that's likely a major part of IF's effects. Probably the most critical change is lower insulin levels.
Okay, why is lower insulin so important?
Well, insulin is primarily a storage hormone. When insulin levels are high, like after a meal, it tells your body to store energy, and crucially, it blocks the release of fat from your fat cells.
Ah, so high insulin locks fat away.
Exactly. When you fast and insulin levels drop significantly, it's like unlocking the doors to your fat stores. Your body can then access and burn that stored fat for energy.
Makes sense. Unlock the fat stores. What else?
We also typically see improved insulin sensitivity. This means your cells, especially in muscle and liver, become more responsive to insulin when it is present. They get better at taking up glucose from the blood. This is huge for preventing or managing conditions like type 2 diabetes.
Better sensitivity. Okay. Any other key hormones?
Yeah, a few others. Growth hormone, GH levels, often increase during fasting. GH helps preserve muscle mass and also promotes fat burning.
More growth hormone. Interesting.
We often see a reduction in leptin. Leptin is the satiety hormone, signals fullness. In obesity, leptin levels are often high, but the body becomes resistant to its signal. Lowering leptin might help restore sensitivity.
Lower leptin.
Okay. Conversely, levels of adiponectin often increase. Adiponectin is a hormone produced by fat cells that helps regulate glucose and increases fat breakdown. Higher levels are generally good.
Higher adiponectin. Good.
And potentially, over time, ABAF might help regulate ghrelin, the so-called hunger hormone, leading to better hunger management between eating periods.
So it's like IF helps fine-tune the whole hormonal orchestra that controls energy balance, fat storage, and hunger.
That's a really good analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a complex interplay, but the overall trend seems to be towards a more favorable hormonal environment for metabolic health, distinct from just eating fewer calories overall.
Right. These hormonal shifts seem key, especially thinking about metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. Okay, this gives us a great foundation. Now let's dive into those specific areas our listener asked about. First up, visceral fat, that deep, dangerous belly fat. What's the verdict on IF and visceral fat?
Visceral fat, yeah, it's the fat stored deep inside the abdomen, packed around organs like the liver and intestines. It's not the fat you can pinch, it's deeper.
And it's strongly linked to bad health outcomes.
Very strongly.
Yeah.
Increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver disease like NAFLD and the NIRS we mentioned. It's metabolically active in a harmful way.
So can IF help get rid of it?
The evidence looks pretty compelling, actually. Several studies suggest IF is quite effective at reducing visceral fat, maybe even more so than just standard calorie restriction.
More effective? That's significant.
It could be. There was one particularly interesting study looking at IF combined with something called protein pacing, basically timing protein intakes strategically.
IF with protein pacing. Okay. What did they find?
They found a 33% reduction in visceral fat mass in the IF protein pacing group. That's huge.
33%. Wow. How did that compare to regular dieting?
The comparison group did continuous calorie restriction, same total calories, and they only saw a 14% reduction in visceral fat.
Okay, 33% versus 14% with similar calories. That really does suggest IF, maybe especially with protein pacing, has a specific advantage for targeting that visceral fat.
It points that way, yeah. And other studies using different IF protocols have also consistently shown reductions in visceral fat percentage. So it seems to be a recurring theme.
Why might IF be better at targeting this specific fat? Does it relate back to those metabolic shifts?
Very likely. The enhanced fat burning, the ketone production during fasting periods. It might preferentially mobilize fat from those visceral stores, which are known to be quite metabolically active and responsive to hormonal changes like lower insulin.
So it might be hitting that dangerous fat harder than just general weight loss would.
That's the potential advantage, yes. Making IF possibly a more potent tool for reducing the specific risks tied to high visceral fat.
Really important point. Okay, let's shift focus to the liver now. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, NASH. This sounds serious. Can you explain it a bit more?
Sure. So NAFLD is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's the broader term for having excess fat buildup in the liver not caused by alcohol. NASH is a more severe form where you also have inflammation and liver cell damage.
And is this common?
Shockingly common. Estimates suggest around 25% of adults globally have NAFLD, a quarter of adults, and it's tightly linked to obesity and type 2 diabetes. The real worry with NASH is that it can progress to serious staph cirrhosis, which is severe scarring, liver failure, even liver cancer. It significantly increases mortality risk.
That's scary. Is there medication for it?
That's the kicker. Currently, there are no FDA-approved drugs specifically for NASH or NASH.
None.
Nope, which makes lifestyle changes, especially diet and weight loss, absolutely critical. They're the main treatment right now.
Okay, so if lifestyle is key, what does the research say about intermittent fasting for NASH or NASH?
The evidence here is actually quite encouraging. Systematic reviews and meta-analyses, which combine data from multiple studies, show significant improvements in liver health markers for adults with NAFLD who practice IF.
What kind of improvements?
We're seeing significant drops in liver enzymes like ALT and AST. High levels of these indicate liver inflammation or damage, so lower is better.
Okay, lower liver enzymes, good sign.
Also, improvements in liver fat content itself. They can measure this non-invasively now using imaging techniques like CK score. If AF seems to reduce that hepatic steatosis, the fat in the liver.
Less fat in the liver, also good.
And even reductions in liver stiffness, which is a measure of fibrosis or scarring.
Yeah.
Less stiffness suggests less damage progression.
So less inflammation, less fat, maybe even less scarring. Those sound like really positive impacts on the liver.
They are, yeah.
Do these liver benefits just happen because people lose weight with IF, or is there something else going on?
Weight loss is definitely a big factor. These liver improvements often happen alongside reductions in overall weight, BMI, waist circumference.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be more to it than just calories or pounds lost.
Okay. Like what?
Like the timing of eating seems really important for the liver. We know that erratic eating patterns, skipping breakfast, eating late at night, are independently linked to more liver fat and worse metabolic function, regardless of weight.
So when we eat matters for the liver too.
Exactly. And this is where time-restricted eating, TRE, might have a unique edge.
How so?
TRE, by its nature, enforces a consistent daily eating window and fasting period. This seems to help restore and synchronize our natural circadian rhythms, our internal body clocks.
Circadian rhythms, like our sleep-wake cycle.
Yeah, but we have clocks in almost all our organs, including the liver, that regulate their functions over 24 hours. TRE seems to help get these clocks back on track, aligning eating patterns with the natural light-dark cycle.
And syncing up these clocks helps the liver.
That's the theory, and there's growing evidence for it. This reprogramming of circadian outputs across tissues is thought to mediate some of TRE's specific benefits for liver health, potentially improving how the liver handles fat, inflammation, and its overall function.
So it's like tuning up the liver's daily schedule.
Kind of, yeah. Studies comparing TRE to continuous calorie restriction have shown similar reductions in liver fat, but sometimes TRE shows better improvements in blood sugar control and might be easier for people to stick with. It's this idea of IF, especially TRE, acting as a chronobiological intervention.
Chronobiological intervention, I like that. It highlights that when we eat is a powerful signal to our body, especially our liver.
Precisely. It influences how the liver metabolizes fat, handles inflammation, and performs its vital functions beyond just the total calories consumed.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, we've covered visceral fat and liver health. Let's zoom out a bit now to the broader picture. Overall cardiometabolic health. How does IF stack up for things like weight, blood pressure, cholesterol?
Right, the big picture. Let's start with weight loss and body composition. Here, IF is pretty consistently effective, at least in the short to medium term.
How much weight loss typically?
Studies often show losses of around, say, 7 to 11 pounds over 10 weeks, or maybe 3 to 8% of body weight over 8 to 12 weeks. Real-world data suggests some people can maintain this loss for up to a year.
Okay, so it works for weight loss. How does it compare to just cutting calories continuously, like CCR?
When you look at head-to-head comparisons, many studies find that IF and CCR result in pretty similar amounts of overall weight loss and fat loss in overweight or obese adults.
So no magic bullet for more weight loss necessarily.
not necessarily for total weight loss. It seems like creating an energy deficit burning more calories than you eat is still the primary driver, however you achieve it.
But didn't we say IF might be better for visceral fat?
Yes, that's the potential nuance. While overall weight loss might be similar, IF, especially maybe with protein pacing, might have that edge in targeting visceral fat specifically.
Okay. And what about muscle mass? Does IF cause more muscle loss?
That's a concern, and the data is a bit mixed. Generally, weight loss involves losing both fat and lean mass, typically around 75% fat, 25% lean. Most studies show IF is comparable to CCR in this regard. However, some research, particularly around certain TRD protocols, has raised concerns about potentially greater lean mass loss. It's something researchers are watching closely.
Right, preserving muscle is important. Okay, what about blood pressure and cholesterol, the classic cardiovascular markers?
Here, the evidence for IF is a bit more varied, less consistent than for weight loss.
Okay. Mixed results.
Kind of. Generally, there are positive trends, especially in the short term. Some studies report improvements in overall blood pressure, maybe lower resting heart rates. Protocols like ADF and periodic fasting have shown reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in some trials.
So, some positive signs for blood pressure. What about cholesterol and lipids?
Again, it's mixed. Some reviews point to potential reductions in total cholesterol and triglycerides, maybe even improvements in LDL, the bad cholesterol.
Okay.
But other studies find less consistent effects. For example, one large meta-analysis in a Chinese population found IF significantly lowered LDL and triglycerides, but didn't change total cholesterol or HDL, the good cholesterol. And some other reviews actually report inconclusive evidence or even note instances where certain IF patterns might potentially increase LDL or triglycerides slightly in some people.
So it's definitely not a guaranteed win for improving all lipid markers across the board.
No, it seems more variable depending on the specific IF protocol, the population studied, and maybe individual responses.
Got it. What about the crucial area of blood sugar control and insulin sensitivity? How does IF perform there?
This is generally an area where IF tends to show more consistently positive effects, similar to what we discussed with the liver.
Okay, what kind of effects?
We often see reductions in fasting glucose levels, fasting insulin levels, and leptin. There's usually a decrease in insulin resistance, measured by things like OMA-IR, indicating improved insulin sensitivity, and increases in adiponectin, that beneficial hormone.
So generally good for glucose metabolism.
Generally, yes. There were even reports of individuals with type 2 diabetes being able, under strict medical supervision, to reduce or even eliminate their need for insulin or other medications using IF protocols.
Wow, that's powerful. But again, how does it compare head to head with just cutting calories? Is IF better for blood sugar?
That's where it gets debatable again. While IF clearly shows benefits, when directly compared to CCR with similar calorie restriction, many studies find that IF isn't necessarily superior for improving glucose and insulin markers. Often, the effects are comparable.
So beneficial, yes, but maybe not uniquely beneficial compared to standard dieting for these specific markers in all cases.
That seems to be a fair summary of the current evidence, yeah. Energy restriction itself plays a huge role.
Okay. We do have a summary table covering these effects on different markers for listeners. Now, this all sounds promising, but we absolutely have to talk about safety. What are the side effects? And critically, are there potential long-term concerns or people who should definitely not try IF?
Absolutely crucial topic. Safety first. Let's break it down. Short-term side effects first, mainly during that 2 to 4 week adaptation phase we mentioned.
Right, the initial adjustment.
Yeah. We already touched on hunger, cravings, maybe headaches, lightheadedness again. Hydration is key. Fatigue. Maybe low energy initially for some, though it can improve. Irritability, mood changes from blood sugar dips, and possibly some digestive upset, indigestion, bloating, sometimes diarrhea or nausea. Focusing on nutrient-dense, high-fiber foods when you are eating can help manage some of this.
Okay, so mostly temporary, manageable, but definitely things to be aware of starting out. What about potential issues down the line? Long-term concerns.
This is where the conversation gets more complex, and the research is still emerging, raising some important questions.
Such as?
One area is the potential loss of lean mass we touched on. If some IF regimens lead to greater muscle loss over time compared to standard diets, that's a concern because muscle mass is vital for metabolism, strength, and preventing frailty, especially as we age. Some data links higher lean mass loss to worse cardiovascular outcomes too.
Okay, potential muscle loss. What else?
Another is circadian misalignment. If an IF schedule involves consistently skipping breakfast or eating very late at night, it could disrupt the body's natural rhythms. We know that kind of chronodisruption is linked to negative metabolic effects and increased cardiovascular disease risk, independent of weight. So the timing within IF matters.
Right, the chronobiology piece again, the pattern matters.
Exactly. Then there's the risk of poor dietary choices. Some people might fall into a pattern of reward eating during their window, overcompensating with less healthy foods, maybe more sugar, processed stuff, less fiber.
Like, I fasted, so now I deserve this junk food.
Kind of, yeah. And if that happens consistently, it could negate benefits, potentially raising LDL cholesterol or other markers like TMAO, which is linked to heart disease risk.
So quality still matters immensely during the eating window.
Absolutely. And then there's the big one that's emerged more recently, a potential link to increased cardiovascular mortality risk.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that. That sounds serious.
It does, but we need to be careful here. This comes primarily from a large observational study presented recently using NAS data. It suggested that people reporting an eating window of 8 hours or less per day, consistent with 16.8 TRE, had a 91% higher risk of death from cardiovascular disease over the follow-up period compared to those eating over 16 hours.
91% higher risk. That's alarming.
It is alarming, but, and this is critical, this is an association, not proven causation. Observational studies like this can't prove cause and effect. There could be other factors involved. People choosing very short eating windows might be different in other ways.
Right. Correlation doesn't equal causation, but still.
Still, it's a very important finding that needs urgent investigation with more rigorous study designs, like randomized controlled trials. It raises a crucial question. Could the short-term metabolic benefits we see with some IF protocols potentially mask or even coexist with unforeseen long-term cardiovascular risks? We don't know yet. Some Rosen studies have also shown adverse heart effects with prolonged alternate-day fasting.
So a real area of uncertainty and caution, especially regarding long-term heart health.
Definitely. It highlights this potential paradox. Short-term metabolic wins, but maybe long-term risks we don't fully grasp yet.
Okay, given these potential side effects and emerging concerns, who absolutely should not be doing intermittent fasting, are there clear contraindications?
Yes, there are definitely groups for whom IF is generally not recommended or requires extreme caution and medical guidance.
Like who?
Individuals with a history of eating disorders, like anorexia or bulimia. Fasting can easily trigger relapse or unhealthy behaviors.
Makes sense.
Pregnant or breastfeeding women, their nutritional needs are significantly increased and fasting isn't appropriate.
Okay.
Older adults who are frail or at high risk of bone loss and fall should be very cautious. Patients with type 1 diabetes. The risk of dangerous hypoglycemia or ketoacidosis is too high without expert management. Even for type 2 diabetes, while IF can be beneficial, it absolutely requires close monitoring and guidance from their healthcare team due to medication adjustments and blood sugar control. It's not a DIY thing.
Critical point for diabetes. Anyone else?
People taking certain medications that need to be taken with food at regular intervals. Children and adolescents who are still growing, they need consistent energy and nutrients.
Okay, that's a pretty clear list.
And the overarching recommendation, really for anyone considering IF, is to talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian first. Get personalized advice based on your health history, medications, and lifestyle.
Absolutely essential advice. Consult a professional.
Okay, this research landscape is clearly dynamic. What are some of the key insights coming from the leading researchers in this field? Where do they see things heading? Yeah, it's helpful to hear from the experts driving the research. We mentioned Mark Mattson earlier. He continues to champion the idea of metabolic switching and IF's potential for promoting not just leanness, but also brain health, longevity, and protection against chronic diseases.
Okay, the metabolic switching proponent.
Then you have researchers like Dr. Stephanie Caligiuri, who's leading a major new study looking specifically how different people respond to fasting. She emphasizes that we can't just extrapolate findings from small studies on, say, healthy young men to everyone. We need large, diverse trials looking at effects on the brain, stress, sleep, blood pressure, across different ages, ethnicities, health statuses.
Right, understanding that individual variability is key.
Exactly. And folks like Corby Martin, Leanne Redmond, Courtney Peterson are running the Dial Health study, looking at the long-term impact of 8-hour TRE on aging and health span, not just lifespan, but years of healthy life. Their pilot work showed modest weight loss, lower blood pressure, better insulin resistance. Dr. Peterson's work also focuses on early TRE, like eating earlier in the day, and its effects on circadian clocks and insulin sensitivity, particularly relevant for type 2 diabetes.
Early TRE. Interesting. Aligning with the body's natural rhythms more.
Potentially, yeah. Then there's Dr. Krista Verity, who's done extensive reviews. She generally confirms IF is effective for mild to moderate weight loss, comparable to standard calorie restriction, and generally safe short-term, with few major side effects. She works to dispel myths, like IF crashing your metabolism, but she also stresses we need more long-term data on sustainability. Can people stick with it?
Good practical points. And who raised the recent cardiovascular concern?
That was Dr. Victor Wenzazong. His analysis of the NHNE's data linking 8-hour TRE to potentially higher CVD mortality serves as that crucial cautionary note. Again, he emphasizes it's preliminary, observational, not proof of cause, but a critical signal that needs follow-up, especially for patients with existing heart conditions. Short-term benefits don't automatically guarantee long-term safety.
A really important counterpoint to the hype. It sounds like a major debate is still IF versus just plain old calorie restriction, CCR. Are the benefits really from the fasting pattern or just from eating fewer calories?
That remains the central debate, absolutely. Are IF's effects unique or just a consequence of the energy deficit it creates?
And what does the bulk of evidence suggest right now?
Honestly, many large reviews and meta-analyses conclude that for overall weight loss and many cardiometabolic markers like lipids, blood pressure, glucose, IF and CCR are often similarly effective when the degree of calorie restriction is matched.
So energy restriction seems to be the main driver for many outcomes.
For many, yes. The unique benefits of IF might lie in specific areas. We talked about the potential advantage for visceral fat, maybe the circadian effects of TRE on liver health, potentially better insulin sensitivity in some specific protocols. But these aren't always consistently found to be superior to CCR across all studies, or they might not be sustained long-term.
And what about sticking to it? Is IF easier or harder than CCR?
That likely varies hugely by individual. Both can be challenging. Some find the structure of IF clear eating fasting times easier to follow than constantly tracking calories. Others find the fasting periods too difficult or socially restrictive. Adherence is key for any dietary strategy to work long-term.
Right. So given these debates and the need for more clarity, what's the consensus on future research directions? What do experts agree needs to happen next?
There's a very strong consensus on the need for larger, longer-term, well-designed randomized controlled trials.
RCTs. Bigger, longer studies.
Because many current studies are relatively small, short in duration, weeks or months, and often only look at one specific IF protocol in a narrow group of people. We need trials that run for years, not months, to understand long-term metabolic effects and, critically, long-term safety and sustainability.
And looking at different people.
Yes, absolutely. We need studies that specifically investigate differences in response based on gender, age, ethnicity, baseline health status, for example, people with diabetes versus without. We also need more direct head-to-head comparisons between different IF protocols like TRE versus 5.2 versus ADF.
Comparing the different IF types directly.
And delving deeper into the underlying mechanisms, really confirming how IF works, using sophisticated measures of metabolism, hormones, cellular processes. And of course, given Dr. Zong's findings, rigorously investigating those potential long-term cardiovascular outcomes is now a major priority.
Okay, so lots more research needed, particularly long-term RCTs, looking at diverse groups and hard outcomes like heart disease. Got it. Let's try to wrap this up then, bringing it all together for our listener. What are the absolute key takeaways on intermittent fasting, the benefits, the limitations?
Okay, the nutshell version. If a GIA is a dietary strategy focusing on when you eat, key potential benefits include notable reduction in that dangerous visceral fat, maybe more so than standard dieting, especially with protein pacing.
Right, visceral fat reduction.
Significant improvements in liver health markers for those with NAFLD and AISH, potentially linked to improved circadian rhythms via TRE.
Liver health, check.
It's an effective tool for weight loss, generally comparable to continuous calorie restriction when calories are matched. And it can improve various cardiometabolic markers like insulin sensitivity and blood sugar, though maybe not always uniquely superior to CCR.
Okay. Benefits clear. How does it work again, briefly?
The mechanism seem rooted in that metabolic switching, fat burning, ketones, triggering cellular cleanup like autophagy, and causing favorable hormonal shifts, lower insulin, etc. Got it. Now, the limitations and cautions.
Generally considered safe for many in the short term, but adaptation takes time, with potential side effects like hunger, headaches, fatigue initially.
Short-term side effects.
Emerging long-term data raises questions about potential cardiovascular risks with certain protocols, like 8-hour TRD. This needs much more research, but warrants caution. There are also concerns about potential lean mass loss, the importance of maintaining diet quality during eating windows, and avoiding circadian disruption.
Okay, long-term questions and potential downsides noted.
And critically, it's not for everyone clear contraindications for eating disorders, pregnancy, type 1 diabetes, certain medical conditions, etc.
Right. So for someone listening now intrigued, maybe thinking about trying IF, what's the practical, actionable advice? Number one, absolutely essential. Consult your healthcare professional, talk to your doctor, or ideally, a registered dietitian. Get personalized advice based on your health. Don't just jump in based on what you read online.
Rule number 1, professional guidance.
If you get the green light, start gradually. Maybe ease into a shorter fasting window first. Listen to your body. Monitor how you feel during the adaptation period.
Start slow. Listen to your body.
Prioritize nutritional quality when you are eating. Fill your eating window with whole, nutrient-dense foods, protein, fiber, healthy fats, fruits, vegetables. Don't use fasting as an excuse to eat poorly.
Quality over quantity in the window.
Acknowledge that the research is still evolving, especially on long-term effects. Stay informed, but be critical of sensational headlines. And remember, it might not be the right fit for you, and that's okay too. It needs to be sustainable for your life.
Be informed, personalize, prioritize sustainability. Excellent advice. So it seems IF is this really powerful tool, right? Especially for that visceral fat, the liver health aspects are fascinating. But these emerging questions, particularly around long-term heart safety, just hammer home how crucial that personalized approach and ongoing research really are.
Absolutely. It's not a simple magic bullet. It's complex.
It definitely makes you reflect, doesn't it? Thinking about your own eating patterns, your health goals, your lifestyle, what might make IF a good fit, or perhaps not the best approach for you personally. It really is a journey of figuring things out, guided by the science as it unfolds.
Well said.
Wow, that really was a deep dive, wasn't it? We covered a lot on intermittent fasting, the different ways to do it, how it works in the body, the potential benefits, but also those really important safety considerations and the unknowns.
It's clear it's way more than just another diet fad. It's tapping into some fundamental aspects of our physiology.
Definitely. And the science is just going to keep digging deeper, uncovering more nuances.
No doubt about it.
So for everyone listening, we really hope you'll take this information, mull it over, think about how it fits or doesn't fit to your own life and health picture. Maybe consider those lingering questions. What are the true long-term effects? Why do people seem to respond so differently? It's definitely food for thought. Providing this kind of detailed, nuanced understanding from all that complex research is what we aim for here at The Deep Dive. We hope this conversation hit the mark for you.
Hopefully it's helpful.
Be sure to join us next time as we tackle another fascinating topic in health and wellness. Thanks for diving deep with us today.